What is up guys, good evening. I thought I would do a video talking about these family vloggers and one thing they all have in common. And that is that they've allowed the fame and fortune to go to their heads, and they've allowed that fame and fortune to change them, to change who they are. You know, and this is something that people should never do, is allow money or whatever to change the people that they are. And, obviously it has to be said that, it's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I was looking at the Innims, for example, yesterday, and I was looking at one of their old vlogs from about 6 years ago, so it's all in 2018. And you could see just how different they were back then compared to now. Like, they seemed like a completely different family back then. They really did. Like, they didn't, when you look at them back then and you compare them to now, you wouldn't think it was the same family. You wouldn't think that it was, because they were completely different back then. But you can really see, like, when you look at them now, you can really see just how much the fame and fortune has changed them. And unfortunately, it's turned them into very unlikable people. And this is a common thing, is that fame and fortune, does have that habit of turning people into very unlikable people. It can do that if they let it go to their heads. If people allow it to change them, which is what so many family vloggers, the mistake that so many family vloggers have made, is they've allowed that fame and fortune to change who they are. And it is quite a sad thing to think about, the fact that they've allowed that kind of fame and fortune to change who they are as people. And, I know that, people like Chris and Sarah will say they haven't changed much, than the people they were back then. They're still the same people, but they're not. They're completely different to how they were back then. You look at them back then and you look at them now. It's like night and day. It's the best way of describing it. It really is like night and day. Looking at them back then and then looking at them now. You wouldn't think it was the same family. You wouldn't think that, obviously, they were very different back then, and it's very clear to see. But, I think that, apart from the whole Priscilla thing, they weren't exactly as controversial back then, but, I feel like they're a lot more controversial now because they've done a lot of stupid things since then, that's obviously caused, a lot of controversy and a lot of upset, a lot of backlash from people. And, it's sad to see how much they've changed. And they've not exactly changed in a good way. They have changed, but they've changed in a bad way, unfortunately. I don't want to sound like I'm trying to be critical or trying to be harsh, but they have changed, and not for the better. The hits have changed, and again, hits haven't changed for the better either. I mean, you go back to 2018, and you look at how different, Isla and Esme and Isabel were back then compared to now. And people say, oh, well, they have got older, and, but getting older doesn't mean anything, Like, they were so different back then because back then they were still going to school. They were still going to school 5 days a week. But obviously, they're homeschooled now, so, it certainly was, like, night and day looking at their vlogs from, 6 years ago, looking at them now, compared to, where they are, and looking at the views as well. Like, you see just how bad things have gotten for their channel. If you look at the amounts of views that they were putting in on their vlogs back in, 2018, 2019, And compare that to their views now, it's just not, it's like, again, it's like night and day. You know, their views were so much better back then than they were now. And there's a lot of reasons why people have stopped watching. You know, to be honest, as I've said before, and I stand by this, I think if YouTube got rid of a lot of the inactive accounts, I don't even think they would have as many subscribers as they do at the moment. Their subscriber count would be considerably less if YouTube removed all of the inactive accounts. But there are probably a lot of people who have subscribed to their channel, and for whatever the reason might be, have stopped watching and haven't bothered to unsubscribe to their channel. And you know, that's, you know, that it's like, this is the big question. It's like, yeah, they can brag about having over 1.3 million subscribers, but it's like, how many of those actual subscribers, of those 1 million subscribers, are still actually watching their vlogs? I mean, there's certainly not a lot of, I don't think there's that many people who are still watching him or watching them years ago. You know, I think a lot of people will agree when I say that they've changed. I know that there will be some people who won't agree with that, and will think I'm being a little bit too harsh, but they've certainly changed. Not in a good way. You know, it's another, they are the perfect example of how money and how fame and fortune can really change people. You know, it's interesting to see. It's been interesting to see just how much fame and fortune can really change people, because it can change people a heck of a lot. And unfortunately, it doesn't always change people in a good way. It makes them very unlikable. And that's what's happened with the Inhams. They've allowed that fame and fortune to go to their heads. They've allowed that fame and fortune to change who they are. And it's basically turned them into very unlikable people, unfortunately. And I don't think anybody's being too harsh for, anybody, would be being too harsh to have that opinion, having that opinion. But, it's like, it certainly didn't seem like they were bragging and showing off as much back then, but that's all they do now. It's like, when are they not rubbing it in people's faces these days about what they can afford? It feels like that's all they're doing, is, day in and day out, is kind of, rubbing it in people's faces about what they can afford. And I just can't stand people like that. I can't stand people who, feel the need to rub it in other people's faces about what they can afford. People like that really wind me up, and really piss me off, to, put it mildly. And it's just like, there's no need for it. And there's no word, I don't know what else to say. But I was stunned when I was watching that vlog earlier from 6 years ago, from 2018, and I compared them in that vlog to them now. It is seriously like night and day. If you looked at one of their vlogs in for sort of 2017, 2018, and you compared that to a vlog from now, from like yesterday, for example, you wouldn't think it was the same family. You wouldn't think that it was, you would think it was different, some completely different people. You wouldn't think it was the same, that it was the same family from 6 or 7 years, 7 years ago. Because they don't look like they don't seem, they're not like how they used to be back then. Like back then, they seemed a lot more down to earth than they do now. They didn't really, they weren't really putting on all these kind of hairs and races. That's what you're seeing a lot now. You're seeing them putting on a lot of hairs and races. It really is shocking. So I hope you've enjoyed this short little video tonight, or this evening. I thought I would just give my thoughts on that. So I'll see you for another video soon. Bye bye.